Senator the Honourable Ruel Reid, Minister of Education, Youth and Information, Dr. Grace McLean, Chief Education Officer in the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information, Mrs. Dr. Tanisha Ingleton, Acting Director, Principal, National College for Educational Leadership, and the hardworking team from the National College. Heads of agencies in the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information, heads of other agencies, original directors and other directors in our ministry, specially invited guests, good afternoon. Let me welcome you to the National College for Educational Leadership's Leadership Development webinar series. Special welcome to our viewers from Canada, United States of America, and United Kingdom, our sisters and brothers of the Caribbean, and other members of the diaspora who are streaming with us today. National College of Educational Leadership as a means of promoting excellence and quality leadership in our island schools and supporting institutions has introduced a leadership development webinar series aimed at transforming the way leadership development is conceived, conducted, and evaluated. The presenter for today is Senator Ruel Reid, or Honourable Minister of Education, Youth and Information. Minister Reid has provided visionary leadership to the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information by clearly articulating what excellence looks like, implementing policies which leads to improved systems, processes, and effective performance. Our minister has high expectations and has consistently challenged employees to rise to the high standards set for them. Today, he will be sharing with us on the topic leadership from the top, creating a high-performance education system. At the end of the presentation, please feel free to submit your questions online for those connecting virtually. And those of us present in the audience, you are welcome to engage him verbally. Ladies and gentlemen, let us now welcome our Senator, the Honourable Ruel Reid.
Thank you very much, Permanent Secretary, and our Chief Education Officer, Dr. Grace McLean, the regional directors who are here, Dr. Winsome Gordon, our CEO of the Jamaica Teaching Council, Ms. Casey Carr, Executive Director of the National Parenting Support Commission, other EDs, Maris Murray from NCEL, other officers of the ministry, including Ms. Maureen there from NEI, our Chief Inspector, colleagues, all aspiring principals, and Professor Hutton, yes, good to see you from UWI, and Dr. Benjamin from, you're still at Jamaica, right? At the Jamaica, soon to become university. Good to have you all. Let me also recognize Dr. Tanisha Ingleton, Acting Director, or is the Principal Director of the National College for Education and Leadership, other team members of NCEL. Just to articulate a little private talk we had a while ago that she mentioned in congratulating me, although I had to rush out of the Senate because we're still in the middle of this cantankerous NIDS legislation, only now at clause 37, and we had to go to 63. So I was there saying to my officers, listen, I need, and of course I have to beg to get time off to come, although I would have had cabinet today. But I said a half hour should get me here. So I got here in good time, and I was commended the fact that I was early. I actually like to be I just don't feel comfortable being late. So Tanisha mentioned, wow, wonderful, you're actually practicing leadership from the top. And it's a very nice way to begin my presentation because that's what it's all about. And it's interesting that as leaders, if we're leading by example and setting the tone, you know, I say to principals all the time, hey, one of the most interesting things is to have your principal or your leader, your manager, ahead of you. When you get to work, if you want people to work hard in your organization, if you're a divisional head or whatever, you get to work early and begin working, and you see what a difference that makes. On the contrary, if you are late all the time, can I tell you what else will happen? So leadership, therefore, is not a position. Real leadership requires personal influence, persuasion afforded by a long track record of strong relationships built by trust. That reserve of trust may have been built by any number of things: direct, clear communication without intention to deceive, consistency, actions that match your words, transparency and openness, explanations about goals and decisions, a private life that matches the public life, competence, concern, and compassion for others, and upbeat, positive attitude about the future. So that's why, you know, they talk about transformational leadership, and at all levels, whether you're a classroom teacher or a manager, you always have to be able to motivate those around you to aspire to even achieve the greatest heights, what you consider impossible. And I could almost tell you my own story. And even before I actually went to JC, and I remember when I went back to Monroe as a teacher, they gave me the worst performing boarding house as housemaster. And I said, listen, I'm going to turn around that house and I'm going to make it the #1 house before I left. And of course, that was done. And I had to sort out JTA in 1 year, fix all of its financial problems, and made them a very rich organization, although people took away some of their money and they got so rich. But JC, and this is factual. And if you go up there now, you still see the sign, Jamaica College #1. I mean, it was considered a failed school. Nobody didn't want to send their kids there anymore, etc. So here me now, after a couple of weeks, have this vision to put up this sign, JC #1. You know what the chairman said to me? You're crazy, you're mad. Yeah, it's just not possible. You can't make this school #1. It's just too bad. But of course, it had to be that aspiration that we are together going to have this consensus of a vision of excellence that we're going to work together to make what seemed then impossible possible. Leadership, therefore, is not only visionary, but it is not all about power. Leadership comes with a higher order of power, one not simply granted by the position or title someone holds. In fact, I always say to a number of persons that you don't even need a title to be a leader anyway. Leadership is largely about influence. Leadership, however, has to be earned. Your followers grant it. And that is why, by the way, having said that, You have to always, especially if you're going into a new organization and you do environmental scanning, you always need to know who are the, what you call the informal leaders in the organization, who are the influencers in the organization, and you have to strategically engage them and what? Win them over on your side so that they are powerful advocates and support systems for you, or else you are going to be doomed to failure, yeah? Talk about undermining leadership, but you take the positive, the high road, yes? Leadership, therefore, is not pride. The greatest leaders demonstrate deep humility, not a false humility, but a genuine humility. Because of their wisdom, they know the vast potential for human growth, and the standards for themselves and their own achievements remain extremely high. The humble leader listens to new ideas, accepts feedback, and I used to talk about feed forward and feed forwards. There's a circular flow of information. Yes. Can I tell you, I was so elated again. I'm so excited about this presentation because I just discovered just a while ago Principal Sinclair from Edfordville Primary. Last year we had the consultation with the principal, and I was trying to dig down, Doc, to find out why am I struggling with this powerful lunches, because, you know, and principal have to be charging for lunch, and the suggestion was made, okay, well, you know, we have to charge because we are not paying, you know, many of these schools over time had taken on canteens and they had to be paying the cooks, and we're not giving them the money to pay the cooks. So guess what? I had to now sit on top of PS for us to creatively find the money to now pay 935 cooks at $274 million. Thanks. Put your hands together for Principal Sinclair, Edfordville Primary. That was his suggestion. We had a consultation. We listened to him. It made sense. We are implementing. Wonderful. The Ministry of Education, Youth and Information maintains, therefore, a policy of dialogue, as was exemplified there, information sharing with stakeholders to address concern as they arise. And I saw some article this morning about PEP, and we're going to correct it because we actually have had the consultation. We've listened to some of the concerns and we have addressed them. So, you know, and all of that. I mean, I remember even when we had the funding issue the other day and people were uncertain, and we sat down and we worked through all these things. I'm very happy that we are at our level. We are practicing what we are preaching. So I hope that happens within your divisions, in your schools, etc. Leadership, therefore, has to be responsive, because remember, it's all about inspiring people and getting them to do the thing that we want them to do without you necessarily doing it. Right? So you have to be responsive. You have to listen to persons and their concerns and their suggestions. Before I go further, though, want to begin at the very top about the visioning, because, you know, when we set out on a journey as leaders, and particularly in the education system, and it's quite interesting because I often make reference to 1962, and Dr. Gordon and I have had discussion about that. What was the vision about the education system? Because I also want to be very practical in our engagement this afternoon. Because, first of all, there was always this big debate whether even the teaching profession, is it, or, well, because the debate whether it's a profession or it's a vocation. And you look at the antecedents, the history of what I call mass education, as we now have it, was actually propagated by the church. And the church had a different outlook, a different philosophy, a different outcome that they wanted from the education system, largely for moral education, coming out of the Renaissance and so on. And that, if we were to appreciate the context in the early part of the 20th century, in terms of literacy levels, less than 20% of the entire world population at the time were illiterate. So that education and training, literacy, the training levels that we talk about now were not at all universal. Now, when we got independence in 1962, and if you read through Eric Williams' own philosophy on education and training at the time, because it was not envisioned, having come out of colonialism, plantation type economy, that they didn't think that we needed a large majority of the population to be highly educated. So depending on a policymaker's understanding and reading of your environment and the future, you could make certain options and policy options. So in a sense, our education system fed on that. So that when we talk about traditional schools versus upgraded and so on, all this is coming out of that there was that time when there was not a philosophy driving that every child can learn, every child must learn. There was not a philosophy about no child left behind. We're quite happy. In fact, only now we're talking about even what you call a special ed policy. And by the way, don't even knock ourselves, because that special ed is not a universal acceptance, right? And so just to connect the dots, for many years in the Caribbean, only 2%, by the way, of English-speaking persons went to a university, right? So now, unlike Cuba, on the onset of their revolution, they decided that, listen, they're going to push for universal literacy. It's all about a philosophy, your outlook on why you're doing all these things. A couple other countries like Barbados had that kind of philosophy. So put yourself in the context at the level of the ministry and on the ground. Again, that's an issue that we have to resolve as leaders. What is our philosophy? Do we want an inclusive education system where every child is given equal opportunity, customized education, meeting their needs, understanding their learning styles, because one size doesn't fit all? Is that our philosophy? Because that's what's going to drive you at the policy level and even on the ground in a school situation. Because if I'm a principal and I'm not concerned about my passes, or am I just concerned about my pass or the development of all students NEI, or I just want my numbers to look good, so I stream, I cream off. All of these things are issues that we have to contend with. And once we're very clear in our mind what is our vision and our philosophy, then we're going to structure our education system to so accommodate. Bear in mind the nuances that we are not dealing with homogeneous students. We are dealing with diversity and how we're going to manage diversity. And so I say all of these things. So since I'm now leading from the top, how am I therefore putting these thinking, these ideas into practice? So the debate started about, for example, early childhood. And you notice that we have been making the point, and I was just at IDB just last week making the very same point. We're talking about developing executive functions and brain development. That early childhood doesn't begin at 3.5. In fact, that's a bit too late, because 80% of brain development occurs. All of these executive function, emotional control, critical thinking, and just behavior management and all of that sort of thing, and just the wiring of the brain are occurring in the first 1,000 days. So again, we kind of miss that in Jamaica. We have been lauded, we have done very well in terms of early child institution, but the weakness is that first 1,000 days. We still have not mastered that, right? So we're pushing, and we have to coordinate with National Parent Support Commission, Early Childhood, and all ministry, and Ministry of Health, importantly, to get that done with Ministry of Labor and Social Security. So we're getting the communities, we're educating the parents, we're supporting the parents. And many other countries have done it successfully. Cuba has had a methodology. Finland has a methodology. They don't have early child institutions that we have, but they actually track every child from birth and make sure they're properly nurtured and developed and ready for formal education at at age 7. Because in those countries, like Finland, they have a philosophy that no child is going to be left behind. And yes, of course, they put the resources behind the education system to make sure that that occurs. So we're trying to replicate that in Jamaica. We are rolling out the special ed policy. We're trying to reduce the pupil-teacher ratio. And we have an aspiration, if we get that right, that now we'll extend the school leaving age to 18 to grade 13. So everybody now, this is now where you have the mad minister, and remember you have a big vision. So my vision is an all-inclusive education system that takes everybody up from where they are to where we want them to be. So by by grade 13, they are graduating with the equivalent of an occupational degree. So that's revolutionary. And because in the 21st century, Professor Hutton, anyway, the demand of the labor market has shifted. And so you have to have agility as well in your policy, because as I said, there's a time when you could survive with a very few persons trained and certified, but now you're in a whole new dispensation. You need now everybody to get access to high levels of training and certifications. You have to build the foundation, create capacity, because one of the things that constrained us many years is that we never had enough capacity of institutions to take students beyond grade 9. And I've said very often, Doc, you only have that 762 thereabout primary institutions. Now we have 177. Still struggling. We still have most persons in high school, but we still have shift schools, and we need to build 17 more schools. We'd love to have 100 schools. But at least with the existing capacity, we at least have them in school. All right? So we're still struggling, but we have to have this aspiration. And so at the policy level, at the PS and myself, we have to solve some of those problems and inspire the practitioners at Effortville and Cumberland and so on within the constraint. How do you navigate, right? That's another thing I'm talking about, leadership. Can I tell you that resources are finite? Can I tell you that what we don't want necessarily is to say, okay, well, I don't have the resources. I don't have no smart board. I remember when we went to college, for example. Remember those television sets that we used to create? And spin them around or whatever. That was technology. And the students still learn, right? Yeah, okay, good. It's creativity. So any idea, and you measure for that. The good leaders accept Principal Sinclair, and the ministry will always try to see incrementally we can improve on the resources we have available, but what can you do with the existing resources? Remember the story of the talent? Right. And there's a thing that you can do creatively, working with other partners, both in the diaspora and past students and so on, to aid and help in resource deployment. But as I said, once there's a will, there's a way. I believe that if we purpose in our heart that we really want to get the job done, we want to reach every child, it can be done. And I say even for my colleagues who are in the multi-grade schools, and I very often, every time we talk about multi-grade school, it's associated with frustration, it's associated with it can't be done. And I thought that this would be a fantastic ground to display good leadership, because in many instances those schools are a small population. You can have peer teaching, their differentiated instruction that you can practice. It's a good training ground for leadership and creativity, right? So ideally we wouldn't like to have them, but it's a context that we find ourselves, and therefore we'll have to navigate. So I say PS, at the macro level, with our overarching philosophy and our vision for what we want with the system, understanding the different institutions that we have, How are we going to develop our own strategic plan to support the overall implementation of our policies? How are we going to have each division within the ministry working similarly to support, to integrate the overarching vision? How then do we, which has been a criticism of mine, that the ministry can't by itself, we sit down talking about policy all the time, but how do we make sure that policies are working at the micro level in each school? So the school improvement plan are good micro-level management tools that, that we're encouraged to be utilized, but we have to have the structure, therefore, to hold school leaders, Professor Hutton, accountable. It's a terminology, by the way, that it's not unique to Jamaica. People just don't like the term accountability. But I believe it's a good thing if it is that we want the education system to do very well. There has to be built-in, institutionalized a culture of accountability. And accountability is not that you're going to fire people, it's that you have a job to do and you must do it to the best of your ability. And therefore it also says that if there are things that are beyond your control, that's what accountability says. Well, I did all that I possibly could do. And these are the impediments. That's accountability. You're accounting for your stewardship. Of course, there has to be monitoring and evaluation and feedback. I also encourage a culture of customer service being customer-centric, and a good manager. In fact, it is the highest matrix of successful leadership and management, which is to be high on task and high on people. So let me just break that down. Yeah. So in order, it's all part of the culture of accountability. Management by objective, and I must say, a couple of years ago, I was doing my master's. You know, we looked at it, and yes, we know as educators that, and not even educated, even the public sector, but generally for many years, by the way, there was not management science per se. People weren't trained in you know, you didn't have MBAs or management degrees. And so people just evolved into leaders, and not all teachers make great principals, right? Right, good. So I say that to say, equally, that not everybody will get this particular matrix right, but if you're trained in good management, then when the strategic planning that you would have done, setting your targets and your SMART objectives, holding people accountable, because as managers, you have to have people skills, because that was also a deficit why we had to develop a lot of management degrees, because people are technically competent and, you know, the culture of a boss. So we're trying to change that narrative that again, Pierce, the good leader is a coach. And it's a classic case of a coach selecting a good team, and you meet and do all the strategic planning and allow the team to play the game. And you keep monitoring and evaluating. But of course, sometimes you have to do substitution, right? You have to take some people off, bench them, etc., etc. And as I mentioned as well, there's a fascinating terminology we came across in HR management, which a lot of us are guilty of, but you don't really practice that. Warm body hiring. Warm body hiring is that putting a square peg in a round hole. So you're not employing the person based on their competence at all. Right? They're just in the wrong position. Yeah, right. And these are things that affect the education system, which we're trying to correct, Doctor. We've had issues with the JTC bill, but that is what the JTC bill is trying to correct, that we need to have people who are properly trained and be serving in the appropriate area, whether it's at the early childhood level, whether at the primary level, at the secondary, and at the tertiary level. Because if you don't have the right person, which in fact is unfair, because you have to hold somebody accountable. But I'm not trained as a dentist, but I'm in the dentist chair. Or, my Lord, can I say I'm not trained as a pilot, but I am sitting in the pilot's chair, attempting to have the plane take off. Not to mention to land the plane. But I don't want to get you scared because you may want to fly again. But in a real sense, Dr. Gordon, that is what we'll be doing to our kids if we don't have the right set of people managing and leading the education system and working in the education system. All right. How much time do I have left? Ms. Ingleton, no, she's busy down there. I have 5 minutes left. I have half an hour. Okay, good. So great leaders, let me just again give you some further specifics, would show persuading and creating enthusiasm to make things happen, planning, organizing and setting objectives, clarifying problems and making logical decisions, listening, supporting and giving constructive criticism, delegating tasks to people with the right set of skill, presenting a positive personal image, being assertive, taking the initiative and responding to with flexibility to changing situations, accepting responsibilities for mistakes and wrong decisions, persevering when things are not working out. The leader has to be like this time is like the ship captain. I'm sure you watched Titanic, right? Thank you very much, Pierce. So the principal and the leader, the first one to reach work, last one to leave. And no matter how things are tough, you will have to always be the proverbial optimist. But equally, you should be a problem solver anyway. And problem solving doesn't mean that you alone need to solve the problem. You're better off doing it as a group and get some good people around you and you assess the situation and work to solutions. Great leaders therefore show shared vision, they lead change, they set example, they inspire people, they empower people, they're honest, they're competent, they're forward-looking. And I want to commend the Permanent Secretary and Dr. Grace for some of the great work you guys have been doing in implementing policy in that regard. So overall, for the education system, I think we are at a reasonably good place, I must tell you, at this stage, that we have had these many years of trying to build a robust education system that is agile, that is inclusive, that we can have our students excel in. I think we're connecting all the dots. I think it's a good time to be in education. And I'm sure I'll be able to talk about what is likely to happen in tertiary, although tertiary itself, Dr. Clark and Professor Hudson, have to get yourself ready because we are going to be providing more and more students now for the tertiary because we want every student now. That's a new culture that every student now will have to aspire to get to the tertiary education. So as it is now, we're rationalizing, I mentioned the first 0 to 3, that what we're doing there. We're rationalizing the early childhood sector. Fortunately, also the birth rate has fallen. So we used to have 55,000 children. We now have 36,000 births last year. That has actually opened up a lot of spaces at the early child level one of the reasons also why a lot of private schools have been closing, because the demand is less for private school. But the public schools we have seen, and a shifting population, have a lot more space at the primary level, where we have to be adding infant departments as well. So instead of building out standalone infant schools, we are identifying where we have additional space at the primary school. It's cheaper because we still have the resources that we can reorganize for them to serve at the early child sector. So it's a very interesting project. And by the way, for the first time ever, through the prodding of the IMF, that the government is now giving us a 4-year budget. So we know for the next 4 years what our budget is going to be. And therefore we can plan out how we can deliver these services, right? We've met with Chase, for example, and we're now channeling the resources from Chase to develop the early child sector, particularly the primary schools and the infant department. So resources are there. We've built out a new budget for the maintenance of our primary schools. And Principal Sinclair, again, we are investing in your canteen and so on. And for PEP and so on, we are rolling out curriculum support, ICT support, the tablet in school program, and other funding coming from OEC for the primary levels. And we have a program, a capital program to build schools, starting next year building 5 schools. And you know, if things goes well, I had a meeting on the weekend where there's a possibility that we could get the other 17 or so built. So it's a very exciting time. Similar to secondary, we've been able to increase funding to secondary while parents have contributed more. So we have increased our funding to the secondary by 200%. And the parent support have moved from 49% to 63%. So exciting things are happening. So what is now required as NCEL delivers on the training now of the leadership at that level, how we are going to utilize some of these additional resources that we have, build capacity, and the whole, as we inspire our teachers to perform in the classroom setting, mindful of some of the social challenges that still exist. Behavioral management is an issue. We still have high pockets of poverty across our country, social problems, and students come to our school, which is and it has been said is a big challenge for educators, whether or not, and part of it is what we'll have to do at the early child level. But I'm saying that this behavioral challenges is an issue that as a ministry, collectively, we'll have to assist our leaders how to manage it. And, you know, from experience, by the way, and since I've had to deal with maladaptive behaviors, you ever hear about, and Dr. Gordon has said it so often, love conquers all. In other words, part of the antidote for maladaptive behavior is to show love and compassion. A lot of these, but they're not having it at home. I mean, I spoke about Professor Herbert Gale's own research about those vulnerable boys and so on who are tortured by their mothers, torture, abused. So even while the debate about corporal punishment is on the table, which is now pointed back to us, that somehow our schools are not always an oasis of love. And yes, we're trying, PS, to manage the stress level of our teachers. We're trying to work with the JTA to make sure that we don't take out our frustration. Because remember, parents take out their frustration on their children. Teachers and principals also take out their frustration on same children, right? So we, at the level of the Permanent Secretary and the CEO, have to also understand that as a problem. And how are we going to be working with our stakeholders to manage it? Because how you manage successfully is always to identify the problem. What are the mitigating factors? You always have to look out. What are the constraints that affect. So because if you have all the resources that I have spoken about, but your biggest problem is behavior management. What is the strategy? What is it that you're going to do to resolve that? So in practical ways, having raised that, many schools, and it has been developed over time, we have our student handbook or teacher's handbook. The school has its own philosophy and policy. You are going to engage very often in orientation, so that we've said to schools, for example, and corporate organizations do this very, very successfully. So once you're getting into that organization, they spend a lot of time to socialize you to the culture, the ethos of that particular organization. So school leadership have to make sure that you set the context, set the aspiration for behavior and all that and academic performance that you want, and spend time with your teachers to socialize everybody, work through. That is why, in a very clinical way, I used to ask my teachers to spend time to do the diagnostic to understand where the students are at the, academically and socially and behaviorally, because as I said, the classroom is what I would say is a very large doctor's office. And so for those aspiring principals, so can you imagine, you are the chief surgeon for all those patients that you have in your school. So you have to know every one of them. You have to have their chart, their history, you have to know everything about them. Because remember now, as I said, they're not homogeneous, they're all individuals. And the best way to solve your problem. So for example, the child that displays serious antisocial behavior, you have to drill down and find out what is causing that. Is it happening at home? Is it that the child lost his father? Is that worse, the mother don't want him to migrate, the father is in the States, and as far as he's concerned, he wants to migrate, but the mother said no. And he gives the mother no ends of trouble, simply because he wants to migrate. I used to have a situation at Monroe. Kingston students used to give a lot of problems, because guess what? The parents don't have no time, so ship the boy off to boarding school. But the youngster, nobody sat down and explained why I'm going to a boarding school. And he internalized, because you don't love me. You ship me to boarding school. And so he comes to boarding school, and he gives no end of trouble. And then when you expel him and send him back to Kingston, he's a perfect student all over again. So these are issues, Permanent Secretary, that we have to resolve and manage within the context of each school, each situation. The other thing that I just like to raise before I close, just because it's a challenge, by the way, in terms of human resource management. I raised it earlier, but it is an issue that we have to develop a better culture of just managing our human resources, being supportive. I've said to board chairman and even some principals, and sometimes they give the minister a bad name, because we can't micromanage, but it doesn't mean, therefore, you are not to have a culture. I said earlier about high on tasks and high on people. And even sometimes the JTA and they come to us, for example, a person is due for promotion, and either the principal or the chairman don't want to sign off on the documents. This person is due for leave, and you're frustrating the process. That's not a minister problem, and the minister get blamed for that. That is at the school level. There are creative things that boards and principals can do to motivate, to show empathy, to show care for the people who are working with you, because you're the team leader, you're the coach. And peers know that I said that, and I watch all together sing, I watch the football competitions, and we have no problem in school finding resources to do those things. But what about just a little car now and then, or just a time when we can have to recognize and appreciate those who are serving with us? Because at the end of the day, it is going to be teamwork that will make the dream work. I thank you.
Could we just give the Honourable Minister another round of applause? Thank you so very much. Thank you. Leadership at the top, not easy at all. Minister said to us that the good leader is a coach. You were listening. The good leader is a coach. The good leader sets example. The good leader manages our human resources. The good leader motivates. And the good leader says, thank you. Thank you, Honourable Minister, for doing this for us, for rushing out of the Senate, for being here early, on time, every time. We really do appreciate it. Colleagues, leadership matters, and our minister has shown that to us today. He has provided visionary leadership, exemplary leadership, and responsive leadership, and we just want to thank him again. Could we just give him another round of applause? We're now going to open the floor for questions. The minister has to get back, and so we want to keep it as tight as possible. And so if there's anybody now who wants to throw out a question to our minister, we have our online viewers, and we're going to see if anything is coming through from them, but we'll take first from the audience. We have one here, Ms. Murray.
Thank you for delivering that quite informative presentation. You mentioned that the leader is the proverbial optimist. I would appreciate if you could elaborate on that, because, you know, as a leader, I've struggled with being an optimist in an environment where there are many challenges. I would appreciate if you could do so.
Thank you very much, Ms. Moore. I think that's a very good question. But and it's back to, for example, when you do your planning each year, right? And if you were to even drill it down to what we heard, and most people are familiar with SMART objectives, right? So this is why I've always said that, you know, you can't set goals that are really unachievable, unrealistic. So that if they are practical and achievable, that should provide a context that you, as a leader, believe that these things are possible within the context. So if you believe that these things are possible, but you can't, as a leader, go around with this pessimistic approach. You have to, because remember, as a leader, you have to inspire, you have to motivate. And we are saying inspiring and motivating in a context that we think is realistic. So let me also drill it down to, and I can imagine a school that says, okay, well, I get just the worst set of students that Dr. McLean sends to my school. And it is something that I don't think Dr. Mac we do very well ourselves, because we tried to, I remember, you know, when I was advisor, and we made a case to those schools and say you have to look at your context. Okay, so what is your grade 7 program? all my students are 20% GSAT average. So analyze what is possible. What's their starting point? What is possible? So you are going to have a realistic objective, but you are going to be motivated and motivating and inspiring your team around you that, okay, they're at A, but we are going to move them to B. And you have to be showing that energy and that vigor that we are going to move from A to B. Because can I tell you, if you're a manager and you can move from A to B, I think there is a big question mark. Because ultimately there is about performance. And unless you can convince me that there is no possibility of movement. So if I'm running a company that, well, I didn't want to even go and mention Kodak. That's Kodak, right? The film company. Yeah, right. And but they made a mistake. It's not that the product, because what they needed to have done is to try. By the way, I mentioned Kodak, but Kodak are the ones who actually they were in the film business, and they developed the digital camera that we now use. They're the one who developed it. But guess what? They could not see that there was going to be a movement away, because they had a business model that there was always going to be the film. They didn't see that there was going to be a shift. So the long and short of that, they went out of business. So as optimistic as I'd like my managers to be, you have to also make a good decision. And a realistic decision. And there's a time when the company will have to close down, right? So, yeah, so let me put it in the context of a school, right? So the school isn't performing, right? The results are terrible. Students are not coming to the school is under, or should I say depopulated, because and all that is back to leadership, by the way. Because on the other hand, you could get a new principal appointed into that school, and it's full of energy, full of vibes, and everybody coming to school, and the same school is a turnaround.
Sir, mine is not so much a question as it is a comment, because having been on the ground for so long, I sometimes wonder what stands between policy and practice. And I know we're pouring resources on the system, but I sometimes feel that there are some underexplored cultural issues that, you know, cause us to go back and forth sometimes in order to be successful with a policy. Do you have a comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fair position, and what I have come to have to accept, and if I were to use American experience, since we see that every day, that no matter how you want to pretend that on one hand, when you talk about policy, policies are driven very often by the politics, all right? But equally, as in the case, for example, with the NCEL bill, there is still a requirement to try and consult as much as possible. Now, I remember there was a thinking, and there was an attempt, and probably Professor Hutton himself could speak more about democracy in the workplace. So you used to have these like cliches, and it goes through management by objective and democracy at the workplace. And it sounds nice, but it doesn't work, right? But then the new science now talk about consensus. That should be the ideal. And then, for the emerging principles. You can't guarantee consensus. So. And so, for managers, you engage, and at some point you have to make a decision. But equally, you have to try and inspire people to go along with you. So I answer it in a very delicate way, because I'm saying there are issues of competence, whether in terms of creating the policy where it can be implemented. There are people who have their own individual agenda where it can be. However, I believe that the system should be robust enough. Remember I spoke about accountability? If you have a strong accountability system, then it's easier to manage. But we really don't have a strong accountability culture in public management. And I remember coming out of the JTA, the view was teachers can't be fired. And I hope NCEL brings a lot of, you don't have to bring the name, files, case studies about the amount of teachers by there. Let me just debunk that. We deal with a whole heap of teachers every year that have been fired, and they have appealed unsuccessfully. However, it's not, even, so while that happens, I must say, within the teaching profession, it doesn't happen in central government. But I haven't heard about any. I have much cases in central government. And I don't even want to use the term fire, talk about accountability, because I'm saying that we should, well, you have created the PMAS and those who have been hired under contract, so that was a nice way to hold people accountable. So I probably should say, well, there is, yeah, but it is not universal. It seems to be the higher paid people at the top who are subject to it, but the rank and file persons can do anything and get away with it. I wonder why you can't gas in your vehicle because the people at the ground decide that they're not doing what they have to do, and the permanent secretary won't fire them. Oh, sorry. Yes.
In my school, I'm looking for practical suggestions I can use to become a better leader. And she would like to know if you would consider mentoring of new leaders by seasoned, successful leaders.
Yes, the answer is yes, of course. We're trying to create a program of that through the Jamaica Teaching Council. So that's a very good way to build a culture of performance, to do mentorship, although it's very difficult to get people to be committed to it, but it is a very good strategy, yeah, and endorsed. Yes.
Good afternoon, sir. How would you treat a situation where, from the social context, behavioral, where a particular student is placed at a school that is considered to be a low-performing school, and the stakeholders, parents, even the teachers and the community believe that this school is a low-performing school. Right away, the students' self-esteem has been shattered, and juxtapose it to where you are coming from at JC. You went to JC, and you were able to turn around the school. At the time, JC had a rich history, so although it was declining, it had a rich history. The students, they have the alumni, where you have outstanding alumni. So therefore, when you say that JC is number one, they would be able to buy into that because of the history of the school. But as struggling school now, just on the scene, and it doesn't have that rich history, how would you motivate the staff, the students, the community, and the other stakeholders that this school can become a school of choice?
All right, and I'm happy for that question, because like I was trying to give you the scenario about, and many of us can allude to coming out of very poor homes, right? But your mother showed you absolute love the family was very close. So my response to that and how school success eventually is measured, if I'm challenging any principal, if you can motivate your staff around the fact that what you're going to do is meet the needs of each child that is before you, that is going to now lead to the success of that particular school. Because guess what, at the end of the day, when the results come out and the students would have done well, you can now promote your school, right? So I'm saying I don't think, and I've given that feedback so often in my own experience at JC, that I didn't get, by the way, the resources until I demonstrated that I was very serious to turn around the school, right? It's now after things start happening and people, and I had to be out there promoting that, listen, this school is going to be turned around, so you can't sit and just wait for the thing to happen. You have to make it happen. And the people who are successful attract successful people and attract resources to them. So, but you must have a plan, a micro-level plan. This is what I said. And I should have gone back to, I started with an improvement plan, a strategic plan that we wanted to achieve this in 5 years. You must begin with a plan. And then you're going to now motivate the students, you're going to motivate your teachers and the parents to buy into that plan and work with you to achieve those goals and objectives. Yes. Yes, it's the sink.
Minister, I don't have to ask what leadership style you employ, because based on our meeting at Kendall, you have put a policy in place, and I want to again commend you publicly for what you have done. But in having been the Minister of Education, I'm curious to know what, if any, challenges you have faced and hope you have.
Oh, well, Lord, there has been... there have been so many and I'm still standing. But I think, I think at first, I think probably the issue with just getting the secondary system to understand what is the change of policy in regards to funding was a challenge. Now, so it required a lot of further consultation, explanation, but what we were able to do behind the scenes is to make the policy work by creatively providing additional resources to deliver, so that persons would now have confidence that the policy is workable, and we have successfully done so. That has been, frankly, the biggest challenge we have had. The good thing is that we got the additional resources from the government to do so. And the truth is, we probably are, probably one of the few ministries that have attracted so much more funding from the government. Since we've been in, we've gotten additional $5 billion. You guys didn't realize that. We've gotten $5 billion more on our recurrent, plus the saving we've gotten from the merger with Hart and JFLL and NYS. We've done a lot of reallocation to make sure that the system is much better resourced. So that's and commendation to Pierce and Dr. Mack and the team. We've been able to do that. So we have a program coming for the tertiary, but I had to fix the lower levels first. And I end with this point, Brother Sinclair, because I'm extremely proud of that achievement, as I said, that in all the hard work we did, we have been awarded a 4-year budget, right? A 4-year budget that at least I can plan. I see where our increment is going over the next 4 years, and I can tell you I'm quite excited that it's not that, it's infinite resources, but you feel good that you've done a lot of hard work, and we were able to submit our midterm strategic plan to the cabinet, and they bought into it, we sell it, right? And which reminds me, when I was at JC, that's what I had to do at JC. You sell a plan and say, listen, these are the resources, and people believe that you're gonna make it work, and you're going to live on it. So, yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. I'll probably just stay.
Good afternoon.
Doc, can you
Minister,
pass me water?
it's clear you have an affinity for the Finnish system that employs a rigorous process for recruitment of teachers. In Jamaica, we have employed several strategies to improve teacher quality. But dare I say, teacher quality is certainly not limited to what's on paper, your certification. There are small pockets of teachers who actually think of it as a little teaching work, or they believe that working in the system is actually an indictment. How are we, or how would you suggest as a leader we reconcile what you really want for us to feel a sense of efficacy and esteem as a teacher with some realities that, you know, this is just a little teaching job, and so you operate accordingly?
Thank you very much for that question. As I alluded to earlier about warm body hiring, which had been characteristic of the education system. So the teaching profession right now, internal government pay scale, you can do the research. We represent 40% of government wage bill. We're not badly paid relative to the rest of the public sector. So, you know, with that, I have had to say to our teachers that when you commit to a job, a fair day's work for a fair day's pay. And by the way, the whole ethos of the teaching profession, it's not just about pay. I did my own research that teachers really didn't enter the profession because of pay. But if you commit to a job, you must do the job with all your heart. You must behave as a professional. But you have to have also the systems of accountability, right? So yes, we need to track teachers in terms of their attendance at school, attendance at class, developing their lesson plans, the quality of the delivery. You have to have accountability system. You have to have, I used to have even things such as customer satisfaction survey, how the students feel about the teacher, how the parents feel about the teacher. All these management systems that we can put in place. And so when we employ our teachers, we are employing them in a context that we are saying we are holding you accountable. It's a culture of accountability. Equally, I would say the principals, make sure you hire the right people with not only knowledge and skills, but good attitude, right? Because you can't, well, they tell you it's very difficult to change a bad attitude. So, in my hiring, I resorted to simulation. Where practically, so you have to come, even if you went to teachers' college, yes, you always have to do a mini lesson. I have to put you in some very difficult situation. Yeah, I know some people cried and didn't come back. You know, well, I mean, they said, no, they're not going to take on. But I'm saying you have, and I used to say to the teachers that I was hiring, this is JC that you have applied for. These are some of the likely challenges that you're going to face, etc. And put it on the table up there, and then you hold them accountable, right? So this is why I have supported the JTC bill, because it's going to aid us a lot to make it very clear along the lines of Finland that we revere the teaching profession, but it's not just a pastime. It is what it is. This is the level of pay, but if you have signed up to become a teacher, we are expecting that you are going to be the greatest teacher that you possibly can. But that must be done in the context of a culture of accountability. Because if you as a leader allow this laissez-faire culture to take root in your school, I can assure you, you have lost control of said school.
Honourable Minister, good afternoon, colleagues. Good afternoon. I must indicate, first of all, so that I hear on behalf of the President of the Jamaica University College, Dr. Ruel.
Very well.
I hope I get an invitation next time.
Of course.
Yes.
Dr. Ingleton will make sure.
Certainly.
I will also say to you, thank you for the support you provided to the Michael. We received the $5 million for the STEAM Center.
Very well.
It's a good initiation for us.
And there's a budget for all teachers' college and community colleges, capital and university. All the major universities are in my capital budget for the next 4 years.
I hope I didn't get you in trouble.
Huh?
Hope I didn't get you in any trouble there.
No,
that we got some money.
No.
So what I'm saying, sir, the question I want to offer to you, in the light of the insightful and comprehensive presentation, I'm also asking, are you comfortable? You began talking about the philosophy. And I'm asking if you're comfortable with the extent to which we have moved from the some people to all persons being expected to gain a useful education, a pre-tertiary phase. Are you comfortable with the movement of the curriculum? We have the philosophy. Let us say we have the philosophy, but are you comfortable with the curriculum that we know? Have we moved our curriculum from one where only some people succeed? Are we moving on in the proper direction or fast enough to one where all can succeed?
Well, I think we are pretty much there now. There have been a lot of, because both administration, did concede that we have to integrate technical and general education, and there was the aspiration of every student graduating with at least a skill. So, but we have taken that to the next level, because when you look at the problem with unattached youth, part of the problem is that they exited the school system too early. And especially now we have higher levels of life expectancy, for example. You have people living much longer, so it takes longer for the youth to get into the labor market, which is a global phenomenon. So I'm not even trying, Professor Benjamin, to reinvent the wheel, because when I travel across the world, just coming out of the World Skills Competition, right, where, again, my favorite countries were there, and we had a minister summit about it, where they had a youth summit as well, and they made a declaration that they want integration between with TVET and the general education. It's quite, commendable that we were able to stand up as an exemplar, that we actually, that's what we're doing. So it has come at a very interesting time that we've been pushing through the national standards curriculum, STEM, STEAM, TVET, and Dr. McLean, who of course has done a PhD in TVET and has always wanted us to do that. But she has been ahead of her time, because this is now the model that Singapore, everybody wants now to adopt this, because of this is the future, right? Artificial intelligence. So as educators, I'm saying, well, all them I'm a sci-fi product. Anybody watch sci-fi? Yeah, good. Right. So because I'm a sci-fi product, I'm saying is that you have to now think of what is the world like to look at in the next 20 years, right? So the education system now has now to respond to that, and we do have, we are very fortunate that we have had, the kind of foresight and institution. For example, Heart Trust, for example. I mean, Ken and I, we never had Heart. What would have happened to us? So we've had Heart. What we're now doing is merging everything together very creatively, and allow, as happened again in Finland, multiple pathways. We have the apps, alternate pathways, secondary education, but what we are doing is exposing students to the general and technical, and then you can also decide later on, particularly around where we already have where students select certain subjects in grade 9, having exposed them coming out of primary to lower secondary in terms of a career focus. That will be heightened at post grade 11, that you're now more focused whether you really want this career or not. But if you would appreciate Dr. Benjamin, which philosophical, and even before I got into even JTA, it's something I pondered when there was this big debate started by the National Council on Education. At the time, I couldn't understand what was our philosophy, because it was clear to me that somebody didn't think that the majority of the population needed education and training. And the theory of Anami, Durkheim, and Merton are very clear what is likely to happen, almost a rebellion in your society, the kind of innovation that will take place in your society, if it is for you to succeed in the society, requires certain training and opportunity, and you don't provide it for the majority. They're going to come back to haunt you. So I'm encouraged, Dr. Benjamin, we can do the refinement, but I'm very clear that we have, and the tertiary institutions have embraced this vision for 12 and 13, and then we are working now to get all the other units to be so aligned. As I said, while all that is happening, the government has committed to give us the level of resources necessary to make this a reality. I think that, as I said, we are at a very good time in education in Jamaica. We just need to be able to resolve the wage issue with the public sector, and then all shall be well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Minister. We're trying to control time. There are actually a few questions streaming in, but we'll try to find another way, Minister, for you to respond to those, especially those in the UK who are asking questions, but we'll try to find a very good way to respond to them. We can send them through. So thank you again, Minister, for that. Indeed, it was inspiring. And what is most inspiring for me as a leader is seeing the synergy of the three heads of the Ministry of Education. Leadership matters. We see the support that they give each other, and we see the kind of support that they give to us as principals, executives, directors within the ministry, teachers of education. So thank you so very much. PS, thank you so very much for being here. CEO, thank you so very much for everything that you did to make today possible. Thank you. Could you just give them a round of applause for me? I also want to thank all the heads of agencies, Ms. Dwyer, Ms. Murray, Dr. Gordon, Casey, everybody in here. I mean, I am just so impressed. Ms. Donald, everything you did with HR, admirable. Dr. Houghton, thank you. Dr. Benjamin, all my aspiring principals right here. Mrs. Troop, awesome. Dr. Clark, thank you so very much. Hope I don't leave out anybody. Seasoned principal, St. Richard's Primary, thank you so very much. Cheryl, awesome, thank you. And to the team from the UWI that I adopted at the back, the technical team, thank you so very much. And to the most hard-working team I've ever come across, the team at the National College for Educational Leadership. Could you just please thank them? They're an amazing set of people with so much capacity and capability. Thank you. Just to let you know what's coming on next, Minister, December 11th, the PS will be doing his webinar on future challenges. Minister, you're here in PS webinar December 11th. Yes, he will be doing a webinar called Future Challenges for Present and Future Executives. PS will be delivering that December 11. And we will also have Dr. McLean's blog on December 11. So please go on our website to read Dr. McLean's blog December 11 called Mass Customization in Education. It is amazing the kind of leadership that we're getting from the top at the Ministry of Education and the support. That is admirable. Colleagues, thank you so much for being here. We have food for you. Please do not go home and not enjoy everything that we planned for you today. Have a wonderful day. To all our viewers online, everybody from the UK, from the USA, Canada, or heads of tertiary institutions, Dr. DeGraw Johnson from Edna Manley is here with us. Thank you so very, very much. Tuning out from the Pegasus National College for Educational Leadership.